Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today we're going to be having a conversation around the state of crowdfunding. Now, first and foremost, large disclaimer here, I work for GameFound, I'm CMO of GameFound, which means I do inherently have a conflict of interest because, obviously I should tell you to back absolutely everything you possibly can, preferably on GameFound. Also, that's not the conversation, but conflict of interest, so take that into account as you watch this video. I'm filming this video shortly after the Six Siege stuff has really blown up. I don't know exactly when the video is going up, probably a few weeks after that, but I wanted to give things a bit of time to settle before I put this video out. But somebody asked me for a conversation around the state of crowdfunding. We've had some things recently happen, we've had companies close, we had delayed crowdfunding campaigns, and someone asked for a conversation around the state of crowdfunding. And to that end, I'm going to oblige, with multiple caveats. One, I'm the CMO of GameFound. Two, this is much more coming from the perspective of a backer than any than any larger industry-wide conversation, like with stats and data and all that. I mean, there are stats and data to a small degree, but nothing crazy. I've been backing crowdfunding campaigns. I've been backing board game crowdfunding campaigns since around early 2019, maybe late 2018, mid 2018. I'd have to check exactly when. There's campaigns I started backing way back in the day. One of my first campaigns, I think, was maybe Alien Frontiers Rocket Dice, if I recall correctly. Been a bunch of intermittent campaigns here and there. Santorini, Dice Throne. Yes, incidentally, both Roxley campaigns. I don't even know if I knew that at the time. I backed Heroes of Airland and Sea. And then I think the point where my journey really started, the way I always put it, is because my descent into madness began with Cthulhu Death May Die. And I always put it that way because that's when I started going crazy. That was the first campaign that was a game that wasn't something I already knew I wanted. Everything else until then had been something that I kind of in some way knew I wanted, and now I was on crowdfunding. I already liked Alien Frontiers, I wanted the dice. I already liked the Resistance, so I wanted various Resistance offshoots. I liked One Ultimate Werewolf, so I backed a few of those. The first game that I backed on crowdfunding, having no other interest in any reason whatsoever, and starting the process and pathway of me really diving down the rabbit hole, was Cthulhu Death May Die. And since then I've backed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of campaigns, which is going to be relevant shortly in this video. Also timestamps down below to all the relevant sections and all that stuff. But recently we've had a bunch of things happen. We've had a bunch of companies either go under or have problems significant enough to be labeled in the category of going under. So specifically, obviously, we have Six Siege and everything going on with Mythic Games right there. And they put a thing on the website that sometimes people ask me, if you're being hard enough or not being hard enough, and I'll call out BS when I see it. And you want some BS? Here's some BS for you. Some actual BS is on their website, on their FAQ. Mythic Games tried to compare themselves to all the other companies that have had to ask for extra money. So like, hey, also companies like Oathsworn have had to ask for extra money. So Oathsworn asked for $20, and we've asked for $245. That's some BS right there. That's some corporate level BS if you want me to call something out. They hadn't, when I filmed my last video on Six Siege, I had not seen that yet, or that would have been in that video. There's a line. That's not really the point of this video, that's a side tangent. Six Siege, Mythic Games, they to me go under the category of a failing company. They might be fine, they might succeed, they might be able to deliver all your games, but they go into the category of definitely something I classify as a failure, not something I classify as, hey, can you pay an extra $20 to get your game? Holy Grail Games obviously shut down. That was not a fun day. That was not a fun day again, on both sides of the fence. For the backers who don't get their games, for myself who don't get my games, for the company who I believe they are good people. I'm not saying that they did everything the way it should be done, but that doesn't take... You can do things wrong and be a good person. Anyone who's ever gossiped in their life, clearly you're doing something wrong by your own standards and admission, and you might think of yourself as a good person. Wrong is not so night and day. It's not so clear. It's complicated. Then there's Chai Tea for Two, which I don't know if this is officially a failure or not. I believe there's articles of incorporation of dissolving the company online. I don't know if that translates into them not delivering yet. Certainly in the category of long delays that make you raise an eyebrow, we have a lot of those. Lazy Squire Games, a company I like and a company I hope everything is totally fine with. I mean, Storm Thunder is significantly late, and their games in general are generally late. To the point that anyone who raises an eyebrow and questions things, I get it. Eldorado Games, same situation. They had a bunch of issues with some of their recent campaigns, and now anyone who backed, what was it called? Oh my gosh, the The school one, I'm blank. Legend Academy. Anyone back that, sitting there waiting patiently, hoping for the best. I get it. Hopefully you'll see your things. There's obviously the company behind the Everrain. Can't remember the company. Grimlord Games, the Everrain, and all that stuff. That's again, question marks, a failure, delays, are we sure? I don't really know. Peterson Games, that's a whole, I mean, they're doing the legwork to try to make things happen. We have Monumental people, Funtails. I mean, lots of companies who are either in the categories of asking for money, asking for small amounts of money, asking for large game-breaking amounts of money, large delays to the point of who knows what. It seems like a messy situation out there. And so should you be backing games? Yes or no, should you be still backing crowdfunding campaigns? And my answer, whenever possible, is don't. But not because of this, just if you're ever on the fence about backing a crowdfunding campaign, if you're ever sitting there thinking to yourself, should I get this, should I not? My answer is don't. But again, that's kind of unrelated. That's a general answer. I had someone ask me the other day, they were thinking of backing Guards of Atlantis, and they're like, I'm on the fence, can you convince me to get it? And I was like, no, absolutely not. If you're on the fence, save your money. Very few campaigns that I have, I'm sure it's happened, but very few campaigns that I have been on the fence and then decided not to spend money on have I come around and, regretted it later. Sometimes I want to back something, and then I do. Other times I don't back things, and I rarely give it that much thought after the fact. Sometimes you do. Sometimes the game shows up on people's doorsteps and you're like, I actually kind of want it. That actually, now that I think about it, with Salt and Pepper Games, they had Resist. That one I kind of wish I had backed. So sometimes it does happen, but most of the time, more often than not, if you're on the fence, don't back something. But again, that has nothing to do with the state of crowdfunding. That just has to do with saving you money. And speaking of saving you money, this is an excellent segue to my partner of this video, Mint Mobile. And yes, it is true that this is a partnership thing with Mint Mobile, and they want me to talk about the, benefits of moving to Mint. But genuinely, 6 months ago, around December of last year, there was a deal for Mint Mobile, save money on your phone plan, all that. I went ahead and did that because, hey, it looked like a fun opportunity to save a few bucks a month and possibly get the same service and all that. So I tried it out, went for the gamble, tried to see if it was worth it or not, and then was using it basically very happy with the service for 6 months before Mint Mobile actually incidentally reached out and said, hey, we'd love for you to try our service and then talk about it to your audience. And I was like, joke's on you, I'm already trying your service, already enjoying the savings and basically the same cell service reception, all that, same quality with saved money and all of that. And so this was an easy conversation to say yes to. With Mint Mobile, you're basically going to have access to the nation's largest 5G network. You will almost certainly save money, certainly not a guarantee, but almost certainly save money depending on your phone plan, depending on your options, with plans as low as $15 a month. Switching my plan over from what I was on before to Mint Mobile took me literally under 15 minutes. Yes, they tell me to say that in this video. They don't really tell me to say it. They say this is one of the things you can say to talk about the plan, but I don't have to follow that because it literally took me under 15 minutes. So it's and to be fair, the phone I have, a digital SIM card, all that stuff, but maybe took me 10 minutes. It was go on the site, enter a few things, go to the other site. They have exact instructions of how to do it. It was a quick and simple process. I'd guess it was even under 10, maybe it was over 10 minutes. So I've saved money, have had access to just as great service, a largest 5G network, and have been saving money all along the way. If you do switch, please use my link in the description down below. I'll have it as the very top link in the description. Please use that link if you do switch. That's how I get paid for this conversation, and hopefully you'll save money along the way. Genuinely been using, I try not to take any sort of partnerships or anything for services I don't in some way believe in, and I've been using this very happily for 6 months prior to them ever having a conversation with me. So Mint Mobile, save money because you just lost $30 on Kickstarter. That was a weird end transition there. Sorry about that. In any case, moving back to this conversation though, crowdfunding is still fairly stable, with a large caveat. And board game crowdfunding specifically. Board game crowdfunding still seems fairly stable in the sense that I've backed hundreds of games, and I now have maybe 3-4 of them in danger. I have to count it up. We have Rallyman Dirt from what's it called? Holy Grail Games. We have Hell the Lost Saga. We have Six Siege, Monster Apocalypse, and Anastyr. So 5 games out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Probably somewhere in the range of 400 to 500 games that I've backed since being in this space. And 5 of them are in danger. 4 of them from the same company. Which should give you a conversation around, should you back multiple campaigns in the same company or not to diversify your risk? That's an interesting conversation. And even in the case of Mythic, there's still a possibility of getting everything. It's just a conversation around, do you have to pay extra to the point that you're paying for another game. This is why it's not comparable to other companies that have been asking for extra. So if you are someone that backs any of these companies, Ludus Magnus Studios, Come On, Peterson Games, any company that you are a loyal follower of to the point that you have 4 or 5 campaigns in the queue, there is a conversation around balancing your risk by not having 4 or 5 from the same company in the queue. You can diversify your risk. But again, 5 or so games out of hundreds and hundreds of games. There was a thread this week on Facebook about this conversation. Should Kickstarter be held accountable for the failures that are going on? First of all, no. Straight up no. This could be a different conversation, but if you hold Kickstarter accountable, or GameFound for that matter, again, I work for them, but if you hold any of the platforms accountable, then the platforms cannot function. You cannot hold Facebook accountable for everything someone says. You cannot hold Google accountable for everything someone puts on the web. You cannot hold people accountable in those senses because it would not function. Google's going through this huge suit right now, but trying to ensure that they cannot be held accountable for things that would make the platform not viable. There's this interesting lawsuit going on, major tangent here, but in which if Google prioritizes results, then in theory there's an argument made that they are now being held accountable for the way and order that results are being served, and therefore if you click on a result that in some way is a bad thing, however you define bad thing, you, Google, can be held accountable because you chose the order that the customer sees it in. If that lawsuit is ever won, that is the end of search engine optimization. Because you could never have a company who's like, yeah, we'll just take the hit for trying to give you the best results. That is not the conversation. Kickstarter should not be held accountable. Should there potentially be additional rules, restrictions, securities, and ways that would hopefully improve the space? Absolutely, yes, and always. This is why GameFound has things like the stable pledge or whatnot, and they have a constant securities team who I can tell you from being in the back end, we say no to people on being able to run their next campaign in situations where many others would say yes. We sit there and we're like, hey, you know what? How about we just wait till that next one's ready to go before we actually take the next batch on? We are doing everything we can as a platform to ensure that your campaign and the space is as safe as possible. But no, you shouldn't hold crowdfunding campaigns accountable. Crowdfunding platforms accountable. But then the point of this weird tangent I just went on is that thread about Kickstarter being held accountable resulted in dozens and dozens of comments from people talking about how they have backed hundreds and hundreds of campaigns and only had a handful not deliver. That handful is still painful. It is still painful, and it is triply painful if for you it's not hundreds, but for you it was 10. And now you have one of them not delivering. It is painful. It is 100% painful, that is true. But the general state of board game crowdfunding is still safe. I would say there's under a 1% loss rate, on a 1% failure rate on crowdfunding. I don't know the stats on that. That's a guesswork. And that's specifically in the board game space. And also specifically if you are backing larger, more established campaigns. Meaning I don't know the stats on pure indie creators. I do imagine reluctantly, I hate saying this, but I do imagine that they are potentially worse. I'm not saying they are. I don't know if they are. I'd have to look at the stats. But I think that a person, and again, when I say indie, I mean like small. Like I think that the more of an established, the more work you've put in towards actually making your project a success, the more that will carry over across the board. And so there's that factor. But I think board game crowdfunding is relatively safe. The caveat part, because I mentioned there's a caveat, is for now. The practical reality is we are still going through the end ramifications of COVID and the state of shipping and increased freight and increased, final destination shipping and all these other factors and conversations that change the nature of the space we are in, such that we are still seeing that ramification. We are still seeing the space evolving and adjusting, which companies have made it out, which companies delivered their campaigns and are closing up shop and moving away, and which companies still have failures that we don't necessarily understand exactly what's happening on the horizon. The nature of everything that happened during COVID did take situations that were not as balanced as they should be and push them over the edge. If there was more profit, if there was more things being managed well, when something's tipping on the edge of a precipice, giving something a little push will knock them over. And a lot of board game crowdfunding was tipping on that precipice. Sometimes through mismanagement, sometimes through passion of the hobby and not charging enough for their product, for their game. They didn't charge enough because they just wanted to get it made. And so any small tipping point can push you over. That stuff still happened. And so board game crowdfunding, still we're seeing a below 1% failure rate. Asterisk, not an actual data point, just an estimation from the eyes of a consumer. And the number might grow a bit, but I don't think it's going to grow a lot. Shipping got more expensive. Deals got worse. The space evolved and adapted and adjusted in ways you may not have liked. Every time you've complained that you see a $50 shipping charge on a Command campaign, maybe, just maybe, that's them course correcting for the fact that their options aren't great. They don't want to charge you more. They don't want to come back to you and ask for more money. They don't want to come back and say, hey, by the way, your Marvel Zombies pledge is going to cost you an extra $400 on top of the $700 you paid for it. And so maybe they course correct for these things by hedging their bets a bit. Hedging their bets in a way that will get you frustrated. And if you're like, well, Alex, that's not the right solution, maybe not. I'm not saying things are easy. I'm not saying they're ideal. I'm not trying to defend Command. I'm not trying to defend anyone in this conversation. I'm just trying to say it's not always easy when you're trying to charge a price point today for something you have to offer in the future while being certain you can actually accommodate and adjust. So deals get worse, games get more expensive, shipping gets more expensive, but the space gets safer. Companies course correct around what's happening. It's not a guarantee. At the end of the day, crowdfunding is still a risk. You should never spend a cent that you can't afford to lose on a board game. These are board games. These are 100% board games. And if you're buying them to invest, then ideally you shouldn't spend money on investments you can't afford to lose either. This is not a conversation around food, rent, or basic necessities of any kind. This is a conversation around $200 boxes of plastic. Do not spend money that you can't afford to lose. Now, that is not said without sympathy. The sympathy for any loss is 100% there. It doesn't matter if it's a toy. No one likes to have their money feel like it's been scammed away from them. Nobody likes that. I don't like it. Nobody likes it. Why should you like it? Also, don't spend money you can't afford to lose. Both things are true. I can be sympathetic for the bad that happens to you, to me, and to everyone, while also understanding the reality of what we are spending money on. But again, I'm not saying back things. Like I said already, I did a video a long time ago on this channel. I did a video sitting on my couch back when I had room in this basement for a couch. Now it's all board games. I did a video called Where Did All the Deals Go? And there's a conversation around the fact that even 2 years ago, I was starting to see the difference in what crowdfunding was versus the shift of where the deals had gone. Deals were getting worse, and crowdfunding campaigns didn't feel like it was as good of a reason to back. There's still deals to be had. There were still campaigns where it felt worth it. There were still types of games that you only got to see the full potential if you got the everything on crowdfunding as opposed to waiting for retail. But over time, those numbers got worse. And I think over the past year, they've still gotten worse. And that changes the conversation. It changes the reasons to back campaigns. And I'm not saying there aren't reasons to back campaigns. I'm saying it changes the landscape. Now, first of all, there still are deals. There still are campaigns like, like Command, like Awakened Realms, like dozens of other companies that still do give you an incredible amount of everything for what you spend. You'll spend a lot, but you will get a lot. You will get a premium product in a way that you cannot otherwise get your hands on. But there's other conversations too. There's other reasons to back. And again, not saying to back. We can come back to that. But there's other reasons to back things. Some companies, some games would not exist without crowdfunding. Forget the savings, forget the value. You could not get a giant big box miniature game with 3 extra boxes and 2 extra expansions and a playmat and whatever it is and sunwash miniatures. You could not get all those things in retail. It doesn't work. The model does not work. Even if you are buying a game like ISIS Vanguard, you can get the core game in retail. This game stores cannot stock the types of things that are sold on crowdfunding campaigns when you have these big box campaigns. So there's still reasons to back. That's one offhand, just the types of games that could exist. The independence from large companies to a degree. I mean, the nature of crowdfunding in the board game space means that we will never see a complete, total Asmodee takeover. I don't actually mind Asmodee, but I do agree they shouldn't own 100% of the industry. That would be bad. And the more you have crowdfunding, keeping the space always open so that companies can start, companies can develop and find that hit, and then that can become another game that then becomes the launching point of a company, and before you know it, you have companies in the space. You have an Orange Nebula, you have an Ivy Games, you have a Chip Theory Games, you have these companies that start and are completely independent from the larger companies that take up the space, and they can become larger companies in their own right until eventually they become larger companies, and then they get some degree of hate for being a larger company. That happens too, but independence and the spark of becoming something will always be there because of crowdfunding. It couldn't exist if you didn't back their games. It keeps the industry forever diversified in a way that no other thing could. It gives more money to the creator. It gets you your game sooner, often an asterisk attached to that. It gives you a journey that is more than the sum of its parts. That game that you paid $40 for and will cost you $45 in retail a year and a half from now, so why did you even bother doing it? You get to follow along on the journey. You get those updates. You get the shipping notification. The box arrives on your doorstep. You open it up. You get to see it. You see the hype and the buzz of the community around you who are enjoying the game. You sit down, you play it, and then either it enters your collection or it's a massive disappointment. You move on to the next one. But the journey is more than the sum of its parts. There are many, many cool things about crowdfunding. Again, going back to videos I've done, lots of references to videos I've done in this conversation, but I did a video, a little choose an adventure video of, is Kickstarter a good thing or a bad thing? And you get to choose and watch each path. I'll link to all these videos down below, but I thought it was a fun little video because it talks about all the joy, the happiness, the fun things about crowdfunding that I genuinely believe in. And it also talks about all the reasons to maybe just not. Every Monday on my To Back Not To Bow, I have a segment, To Back or Not To Back, I have a segment called Cult of the Now. And Cult of the Now is exactly that. It's me talking about a retail game you can get your hands on now. It's not Cult of the New. Sometimes it's Cult of the New, but it's more importantly, it's Cult of the Now. It's something you can get your hands on now. You can check the reviews out now. It's a good price point now. It's not going to be $170 now. Everything about it is now can be good. Both things can be good. I look around my collection and I see so many games in my top 100 that are crowdfunding games that I'm so happy I own. And I also see so many games in my top 100 that are retail games that cost a fraction of the price point that I'm so happy I own. I'm happy I own both. Little birthday gifts that show up on your doorstep a year later. They're fun. They are fun. There is joy to be had in the board game space that we are in, whether it's crowdfunding or not crowdfunding. It's not always the best deal. It's certainly not always the best deal, not anymore. And you should never spend a cent you can't afford to lose. These are board games. They are nothing more. They are not essential. They are not necessary. And a decent amount of you watching this video have more of them unplayed than you should while you sit there debating whether you need to spend $150 on the next one that's currently on crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is still a safe bet. Not a guarantee. Never a guarantee. But I still think board game crowdfunding is a safe bet. I also think you should never spend money you can't lose. And if you're ever on the fence, don't get it. There'll be another campaign next month, and a campaign after the month after that. And some of those campaigns will capture your attention and imagination in a way that you have to have it. That you don't want to debate it, and you want to get it. And you know what? If you said no to the 3 things you're on the fence about, then you'll be able to say yes more easily to that one that you need to have. I think the state of board game crowdfunding is totally fine. Not without its impacts. There's impacts, make no mistake. I've said this before about Marvel Zombies, but like, every time you have one of these incidents, every time you have a company ask for more money, every time you have a company fall apart, every time you get a game that you thought looked great and turns out to be a disappointment, someone else drops out of the crowdfunding race. Someone else sits there and says, you know what, I have enough games, and so maybe I stop back, maybe I back less. And every day new people join the conversation too. Both things are happening. Ultimately, I think crowdfunding is good for the board game ecosystem. I think it is a journey that many people will get to experience as a consumer, as a backer, and have fun along the way and get good games, often at reasonable, if not the best price points, but get more than just a conversation about the price out of it. I think it's incredibly good for the publisher side of things, in terms of giving more money to publishers, giving more incentives and reasons for someone to be able to join the space with something that was just an idea. I think it's a good thing. But still, and always, if you're on the fence, just don't back it. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And as always, I hope you have a good one.